Hi, I'm Donna Davis here with Lauren Highfill Williams, who is the Marketing and Communications Manager for the National Peanut Board. Thanks for being here today, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me, Donna.
And welcome to this edition of Marketing Evolution, where we want to help marketing professionals stay on the cutting edge of all the great things you can do. And Lauren is such a great guest for that because the National Peanut Board is doing some really innovative marketing. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, Lauren, and how you got into this position.
Sure, yeah. So I got my college degree from Georgia State University. I majored in English, go Panthers. And then right after I graduated, I decided to get a master's degree in professional writing from Kennesaw State, so go Owls. And then while I was doing my degree at Kennesaw State, I had the opportunity to do several internships. And that led me to my first job, which was with the University College of the Arts PR department. So started working in that arena, was having a lot of fun doing event planning
really
and
fun.
writing, and loved talking to students and meeting teachers and sharing people's stories in that regard. Then I saw an opportunity come up at the National Peanut Board for a communications position. I did not know that the National Peanut Board even existed, but I love peanuts and peanut butter and love communications, so it seemed like the perfect fit. And actually just earlier this month, I've celebrated 10 years with
Wow.
NPB. So it's been quite a great challenging, interesting, fun journey.
Yeah, it's funny with things like peanuts and peanut butter, you don't think that there is, like you said, you didn't even know it's there. You really don't think about that somebody has to advocate because you grow up and you love peanut butter and you just
Right.
think everyone loves peanuts. But there's a lot going on with peanuts and particularly with allergies and a lot of education that has to be done with
Right.
it.
Yeah. So, particularly in regards to allergies, what we try to do is make sure that people have the proper information, that they don't have any misconceptions. A lot of people think that, a quarter of the population has a peanut allergy, but it's really more like 1%. So it's a very serious issue for that 1%, and that sort of affects a lot of other people. So some exciting news in regards to allergies that we've been helping to promote is the new guidelines from the National Institutes of Health that recommend early introduction of peanut foods to infants between as early as 4 to 6 months to help prevent peanut allergies. So that's a reversal of the recommendations from about 20 years ago that recommended withholding allergenic foods.
It's interesting how we're learning more and the science, and even it seems like people who grow up with pets tend to not have pet allergies, and so it does seem like we're seeing along the lines of all types of allergies, that early exposure, and of course I'm no expert on any of that, but it seems like that's where it's going.
Yeah, it does seem kind of logical that early introduction would be protective, but it takes a lot of research to help prove that. It's particularly in the regards to peanuts.
Yeah, and I think parents have this fear, that the best way to protect their child is probably to not expose them just in case. So there's a lot of education that goes on, a lot of content marketing that you have to do. I also want to mention that feel free to ask questions of Lauren. That's what this is all about, to make it really interactive. But let's talk about some of the content marketing that you're doing with the National Peanut Board and how you're using influencers to help get the word out that people do need to expose a little earlier.
Yeah, so specifically this past year, we worked on a campaign led by our agency, Golan. We work with their Atlanta and Chicago offices. And over the past couple of years, these new guidelines have been out since 2017, but we were realizing that a lot of parents hadn't gotten the message, or if they had, they still had some trepidation and fear about early introduction. And through this research, we also found that while we'd like to think that parents are relying primarily on the advice of their pediatricians and health experts, that's not always the case. With the popularity of social media and all the influence that a lot of folks have on those platforms, we really wanted to tap into those influencers to help get our message across. So we partnered with celebrity, Justin Baldoni from the TV show Jane the Virgin, and he and his wife just happened to have a new son who was right around that early introduction age of 6 months and was interested in partnering with us to help spread the message about early introduction to prevent peanut allergies. So we worked with him on a series of 3 videos to chronicle his family's process of going through this early introduction and really help connect to that target audience of millennials and new parents and caregivers to have them sort of go along for the ride and remove some of that fear. So we partnered with Justin as sort of our capstone celebrity, and then we also partnered with about 10 other micro-influencers who primarily had followings on social media platforms like YouTube or Instagram, who had kids right around the same age or whose followers would be in that target audience for us. So it proved to be a really effective campaign.
So some of this, I would think, has to be a little trial and error on the part of a marketing department to see, is this going to work? Is it going to translate into, a lot of views, a lot of people, actually saying, yeah, I learned something from it. How do you measure the success that you had from that? And, was it a success? Was it what you wanted? Was it what you set out to do?
Yeah, so I think benchmarking is really, and surveying and research is a really important component of a campaign. You can't, for every single campaign you want to do, especially for an organization like ours, who's on the smaller side, you can't do a full-blown research study or survey for every campaign. But particularly for this early introduction campaign, it's such an important priority for us, and we really wanted to ensure that we were achieving our measurable goals. We did do a pre-campaign exposure survey and a post-campaign exposure survey as well for those target demographics that we were looking at. So asking about new parents' willingness to introduce, if they had less fear, those type of questions before being exposed to the campaign and then after. So we found really significant results. I think upwards of 60% were willing to introduce after being exposed to our campaign. So we
That's
felt
wonderful.
really
Yeah.
proud of that accomplishment.
Right. And those stories, I would think, it's not only that you can just use it for one campaign, I would think you could go back to it again and again because the story's not going to change. I mean, it's still going to be
Right.
timely, a year from now if you wanted to put it back out, right?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the challenge, too, is that these, well, I call them new, but they're from 2017. These guidelines came out, and especially when you're talking about wanting to get earned media coverage, we were learning from media folks that, we covered that story. We covered that news, that early intro guidance in 2017. So what's the new hook? What's new? What's interesting? Why should we cover it again? Even though there's new parents every day and, you're not necessarily paying attention to news that doesn't apply to you at a certain time.
That's true.
Yeah. So we're constantly every year trying to figure out how to make it compelling. So for 2019, we're actually working on a new iteration of an early introduction campaign. And we'll be doing a campaign that we're calling Size 4 to 6 months that really takes advantage of the correlation between infant clothing sizes and this early introduction window. So we'll be creating a line of peanut-themed clothing for babies, and then pairing that with a little early introduction kit. So it'll have educational materials about the proper timing and recommendations for early introduction and how to go about doing that with thinned peanut butter or powdered peanut butter or peanut puffs. So we're going to have a big fashion show and just turn it into something that's fun and appealing to media and our target audience. So we're hoping to
Right.
have a lot of success with that
I worked
too.
in television news for years before I ever got into this, and I think it's such a great idea because I used to tell people, they'd say, "How do we get our events covered?" And I'm like, just do something that is visual. People want to see it and can interact with it, and so now in the days of social media, that's even more important. But they always wanted to correlate it with their cause, and I'm like, sometimes you really don't even have to do that. You just have to have something that's really visual, and babies dressed in cute little peanut stuff
Yeah.
and fashion show for babies. That's right up there because we used to
Right.
cover cat fashion shows with no cause just because it's cute video, and you see that more and
Right.
more now. But I do want to remind people to go ahead and ask questions, and that's the reason we're here live. Let's talk a little bit about just a fun campaign to kind of remind people of all the different things you can do with peanut butter.
Yeah.
That you did some videos recently that you can use in social media, that just like the food videos you see all the time where it's fast motion. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah,
And we'll
absolutely.
show those.
Yeah, so something else that we work on, and as you alluded to, everybody is kind of familiar with peanuts and peanut butter, so we want to encourage people to think a little bit outside the jar, outside the box from how they might normally use those ingredients. So we have a great couple of dietitians who are on our team who are we call them food-loving dietitians, really innovative with exciting recipes. So we recently created 6 or 8 new recipes with featuring peanut butter. And then for several of those, we partnered with you and your team to create these wonderful, call them hands and pans or tasty style videos. I think it used to be sufficient just to have a recipe and put that up on your website. Then, the visual element became more important with having professional looking photography done. And nowadays, I think it's becoming more expected that you have this video type of element to go along with it can be shared across social platforms as well.
And what advice would you give to, there's a lot of brands out there, they're not where the National Peanut Board is, about doing these kinds of things? Things to know, maybe you made, I don't know, not to say mistakes, but what have you learned along the way from these campaigns and that you can share with the audience if they're thinking about doing this sort of thing, whether it's a food video or just a series of videos? Any advice that you'd pass along with these?
I think just be really clear about what your goals are, what you want to get out of it, who you're trying to target, and making sure that you're creating a video series that fits and is going to be compelling with your audience. Particularly with these recipe type videos, we knew, our target audience of millennials does not have a very long attention span, So we didn't need a recipe video that had, a chef talking or a lot of additional information, 4 or 5 minutes. That's just not going to work. So we really learned and observed from the success of these tasty style videos and knew what we wanted going in and what was going to be successful, and they really have been good for us as well. I'll tell you, we did another video series outside of recipe development that was an animated series that focuses more on sort of the edutainment factor. So some of the most popular content on our website relates to peanut history and peanut fun facts and George Washington Carver. So we decided to just lean into the fact that those were popular pages on our website and build them out a little bit more. So we created a series of animated videos that were about 1 minute long too, ideal for social, and really just focused on some key facts to make those pages more relevant and engaging for the folks who are coming to our site.
And your members of your association, or the people who support yours, are peanut farmers, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, they are.
And so I don't think that a lot of us, at least I don't ever think about like, well, when I use peanut butter, I'm really supporting,
Yeah.
a trade or, farmers right here in the U.S.
Yeah.
who are growing these peanuts. And it had to be, when the whole peanut allergy just went so big. It had to be really devastating for them. And I never really thought about it. I remember that Delta always handed out peanuts, and then all of a sudden, no peanuts. Every
Yeah.
kid had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that
Right.
we took to school. And then it was like, oh no, no peanuts in the cafeteria. And that had to be very hard for them.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a challenging situation, but I think we as a staff and we as a board were very lucky that early on, really from the onset of the board in 2001, they recognized that peanut allergy was an issue, and they didn't. I mean, they're mothers and fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers. They're family folks. They don't want anybody to be harmed by the product that they grow.
Right. And I was just, where I was going with that really was, and I make it very clear, was that that I think that it's so great to tell those stories, to bring
Yeah.
back those real people every day that are out there working really hard. Those stories with the peanut, like the things that you're talking about, the history of
Yeah.
peanuts and that kind of thing. I think those stories are just great as well. But there's so many different things to do. What do you see, or do you want to talk about how this campaign that you just recently did was maybe a little bit different than the Yumly campaign, or things people might consider with both of those, or do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we did a partnership with a recipe app company called Yumly last year, and it was a wonderful experience. They did a great job. Their production team was great. I went out to their facility in California to supervise the filming and kind of learn from that too. And I think a challenge for us was they have a great following on their platform, but it's kind of contained to their followers. So a large part of our budget kind of, I felt like wasn't necessarily, we didn't have as much control over who was being targeted, or if we're, able to retain and keep relationships going with the folks who were liking and engaging with our videos. So for this most recent project with you and your team, we had you guys create it in a much more cost-efficient manner, and then we were able to, have a little bit more control over how it was promoted and who we were reaching through our owned social media platforms.
Yeah, I think there are probably advantages to both. I mean, like you said, you would have more control. You're also associating with a big brand that people have a lot of trust and they like, and when they see a Yumly video or Tasty video, they're
Yeah.
definitely going to engage with it. So it's probably great to try both. And,
Yeah.
And, and it's a great experience, I'm sure, to work with a large brand like Yumly, who really knows what they're doing and how to make these videos so engaging.
Yeah.
So tell me some of the things that you mentioned the big campaign that you're going to have. I'm just looking at the time. You mentioned the big campaign that you're doing. Any other things that you're thinking of, or anything that you want to talk about that's really been successful as far as the social media innovation or any of that?
Well, I'll tell you on the consumer marketing side, we decided to transition away from sort of traditional advertising over, I guess, about 3-4 years ago. So in the past, we had been doing mainly print advertising in magazines as a way to reach consumers. And you never really know if people are really paying attention to those ads. Is it reaching the right people? Are they just flipping right by it and not even, really reading through and getting your messages? So 3-4 years ago, we decided to transition more of our marketing spend, advertising spend for consumers over into the social media realm. So based on some consumer research and identifying our target market as millennials, we knew that they're living their life, or a component of their life, online and through social media. And we also knew that that particular audience need to be a little bit more excited and passionate about peanuts. They had been familiar with peanuts for years and years and years, and our competition they might be a little bit more excited about. So we needed to give them some new reasons to be excited and ways to be excited and passionate about peanuts. So we created a persona called the Peanut Vendor. And so he was going to be throwing peanuts and peanut butter into relevant conversations online and creating really compelling content on Twitter and Instagram. Peanuts Here is the handle for that persona. So that worked really well for us. Starting about 3 years ago, we would create multiple posts, 8 or 10 posts every month, just kind of funny, irreverent. We were able to take a lot of learnings because you get that immediate feedback and know whether your messages are resonating with your target audience when you're on those social media platforms in comparison to just the print advertising campaign. So we were able to take learnings every month and grow and pivot and change. And just over the course of 3 years, social media marketing has changed, and what worked at that time doesn't necessarily work these days. So we've transitioned even more. So now we have taken a step back and are going to be doing kind of mini campaigns on social media through this Peanuts Here handle. So most recently, we identified a trend that had been popular a couple of months ago that got people all up in arms, which was the peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich combination. It was on the Today Show and covered by Huffington Post and Pop Sugar, and people either just loved it or hated it or had never heard of it or had been eating it since they were a kid. So you couldn't help but have an immediate reaction to that. So people felt compelled to share and chime into the conversation. So we, as the National Peanut Board and the experts on all things peanut, decided to dive a little bit deeper into this trend. And so created a series of videos, one that focused on talking to food scientists to really understand the science behind why this combination might actually work, or why some people find it, grossed out by it, even without having tried it. Then we also took a culinary component to it and did a interview with a chef, too, who tried it and then created her own riff on it, where she did a PB and mayo, bacon, and banana sandwich. So that was actually
horrible.
It actually looks really good. I didn't try it,
Really?
but it looks really good.
Oh.
And I don't even eat bacon, but it looks really good.
Yeah.
And then we also had real people, everyday people, try it too, because just to make it a little more relatable. So we created that video series and posted it on the Peanuts Here channels, and put some paid money behind it too, and got a good balance of earned impressions and engagements along with the paid. So it was a good way to keep our product relevant for our target audience.
So did you guys come up with the whole peanut butter mayonnaise sandwich and promote that, or did somebody else just start that and then you guys took it and did more with it, saw it as an opportunity and just took it and ran with it?
It just started kind of on its own. I think somebody must have posted about it, and a news outlet got a hold of it, and it just sort of spread like wildfire.
Isn't that amazing? And if you try to come up with something
Right.
like that, you probably couldn't.
Right.
I
yeah.
always thought that the Ice Bucket Challenge started with the people
Oh, yeah.
at the charity.
Uh-huh.
And it absolutely didn't. And if they had started it, who knows if we'd ever heard of it.
Right,
Sometimes
yeah.
it is all about people want somebody who's just organic, or
Mm-hmm.
they don't feel like is associated really with the brand.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Diet Coke, and you would put what were the
Isn't it
things?
Mentos?
Yes,
Yes.
Mentos in the Diet Coke. I mean, that had to be just huge for Diet Coke,
Yeah.
and for Mentos, but I don't think either one of them ever came up with that. And if they
Right.
had tried it, it probably would not have worked.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it lends a piece of authenticity and credibility to it that you wouldn't necessarily get if it was coming just from the brand.
So do you feel like your writing is a great, because for years I didn't, okay, so I got out of television news and thought, what on earth can I do, right? I didn't feel like my skills of reading a teleprompter really, translated to the real world. But now I think, if you're a journalist, if you're a great writer, if you can write engaging copy and that kind of thing, do you feel like that really helps you every day as you try to compete with a jillion messages that you are a great writer?
Yeah, I think so. Writing is a really core component of great content marketing, and being able to tell stories is really compelling to folks as well. So, depending on the platform and the media, we've been talking a lot about social media, where really short and sweet to the point kind of is the most
Right.
attention getting. But there's definitely a space for longer form writing and longer form storytelling, and we try to do that a lot on our National Peanut Board website. So we're telling stories that are relevant to multiple audiences, whether it's millennials or writing something that's relevant to a dietitian type audience or a culinary food service person too. We recently did an event in Austin, Texas, with a well-known chef there, Chef Ileana de la Vega, at her restaurant in Austin, and her expertise is in regional Mexican cuisine, Oaxacan cuisine. Well, a lot of people don't know about that cuisine, or might have a misconception about what Mexican food is, and might be surprised that peanuts are a core part of that too. So as part of this event that we did at her restaurant, also did an interview with her to share some of her stories about growing up in that area, her favorite memories of food, and how peanuts play a role as well. So we have that on our website too for that.
Yeah, I
audience.
love, I think I sound that, Korean food, different, foods. There's a lot of peanut sauces and things like that in foods. And I love the peanut sauce that we did in that video. It's so good. But peanut's such a great source of protein. And I always wish that restaurants kind of had more of it. But you do find it in a lot of, I think, in a lot of dishes outside of the traditional American type food, because it is such a great flavoring and it's very distinctive.
Right, yeah, and it does have it has a lot of culinary versatility, and it's in a lot of global cuisine. So whether you're talking about South American or Asian or African, it's kind of been all over the world. So.
Yeah. So we only have a couple more minutes. First of all, how do you keep up with all, like we were talking about before this started, this whole world and the space of content marketing is changing so rapidly. How do you yourself keep up with that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. But what I like to do, I listen to several podcasts. The Harvard Business Review is a great one. They have a secondary podcast that's called Women at Work as well. It's sort of general business advice, women in the workplace advice, and then also I am currently taking a marketing strategy certification from eCornell. So it's a series of 6 courses, all online. So as I mentioned, most of my educational background is in English and writing and communication. So my marketing work has really been on the ground experience, which is priceless and invaluable, but I really wanted to make sure that I was doing more to have a strong foundation in marketing concepts. So I think looking into those professional development opportunities, those certifications. I'm also working on Google Analytics certification
Wow.
and Google AdWords too. Those are both free, which is nice. And then groups like the Marketing Communications Women of Atlanta is such an asset, how we got connected. So I was added to that group by a former coworker, one of the admins, Jewel Hazelton. Hi, Jewel. And then I've just connected with some wonderful folks on there. And then I'm also working with a career coach as well. So
And it's
been
great advice. It's great resources and advice. And you really have, I think you have to consider yourself part of a community in order to keep up with everything. Thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you so much for having me,
And
Donna.
we'll see you next time.
Thank you.